Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Quality QuaranTIME. My name is Alex Vander Johnson. Today, my guest is Larken McCord. She was my high school English language arts teacher for 2 years in high school for my freshman year and my senior year. So she sort of got to see uh, me transform and blossom and evolve. She was there for sort of the inception of a lot of my creative pursuits. She always inspired me to be a writer. She had some of the most out of the box writing exercises. She taught us about stream of consciousness. She incorporated pop culture and new digital technologies into her learning lessons. She also, people don't know this, but she was the editor of my high school graduation speech, and I feel like, properly gave her the shout out that I feel like she deserves. So I just wanted to talk to her about what it's like being a high school teacher in Georgia and how she got to where she is today. So here we go. Hello! Look at those books!
I know, right?
Look at all those books. What a classic English teacher living room. That is impressive.
That is exactly what all of my students have said.
Oh yeah, because they see this.
Class, they're like, oh my God. And then, I would say things like, okay, any questions? And they would pick some random title like, have you actually read that?
Yes, you have. Did you set this up specifically for the class? Like, are you hiding anything, or has this always been there?
This has always been there. I will say, this is pretty much the only space I'm using for Zoom right now. And I think that's a thing. I've heard Zoom room is a thing people have now in their home. So,
I love it. Where are your cats right now?
Okay, well, so I only have one now.
Okay, I'm sorry.
It's all good. Yeah, well, they're so old. I've had my cats for ever.
Really?
So, okay. Smokey died in February, but Spike is out on the sun porch right now.
As he should be, living his best life. How are you holding up during the quarantine, mentally, emotionally, physically?
Yeah, it's weird, right? Because in some ways it feels not that strange, I guess. I live on Peachtree Street. I go outside. I see cars. I'm not completely isolated.
Right.
I'm still working.
Right.
But in other ways, it's completely surreal and bizarre, and just in some ways, trying to be normal and trying to maintain routines has actually felt even weirder. Shouldn't we be paying attention that there's a pandemic? And
yes, that is
happening. Yeah.
At this point in the timeline of things, I've been sort of feeling that lately of, wait, this has become normalized to me.
Yeah.
And that is a very strange feeling, phenomenon, I'd say. Now I just did a little intro for you. Now that I'm an adult and have some perspective on my life, and looking back at and realizing that your classroom was not the norm, for all students across America. I was talking about how you incorporated digital media. We had to blog. We had to create a blog. You included pop culture. We watched Clueless in order to understand Emma. Were you taught how to do that, or was that something that you came up with on your own?
In some ways, yeah. It's interesting that I did go to college in a secondary education program.
Mm-hmm.
One of the best in the country.
Right.
And a lot of the
Vanderbilt?
stuff yes, that's, but a lot of the stuff that I think it's actually on the, there's a Vanderbilt. But, and a lot of the stuff we were taught to do there and that we had to practice is still, it's been 20 years and that's still considered best practice. Technology and that kind of thing.
Right.
And how to integrate that. The technology itself might change, but the basic principles of when is it a good idea to do something digital? When is it, more trouble than it's worth? And I've always had the understanding that, English and communication, if it's not relevant to your life, and if you don't understand how to apply the skills or the strategies that we use to make meaning from older text or whatever,
Right.
if you can't in turn do that in the world to the world around you, what's the point? So
yeah, no, it always made it so relevant because I think, especially as a student, you're thinking, oh, this is just some old people literature. Like, I have no connection to it. And then seeing sort of, a book like Emma being, reconstructed and being like, oh, is this what I'm reading? Is this the book that I'm reading? And it makes it that much more fun. How have you changed it? How have you changed your format at all with, the phenomena of social media? Have you incorporated, anything like Instagram or Facebook in any way?
yes, a little bit. It's funny. I think in some ways students are really resistant to that as it's become a little bit more mainstream. I mean, if there's anything that at all seems to hint of trying too hard or trying to be like hip or cool,
Right.
high school students want no part of it. So I've never done like a Snapchat assignment or
Sure.
We're not making TikToks, although we joke about TikToks. But
Right.
yeah, I use those things as points of reference a lot. The notion of hashtags. Sometimes, if they might tweet from a character, or they might tweet from a character's point of view and come up with, what are the hashtags that Nick Carraway would use when he's talking about, Gatsby or whatever. So
I love that. I love that.
And it's really funny. There's some great ones that they come up with. I teach mostly American Lit now, so we do, especially like in the fall, all of those revolutionary folks, and Patrick Henry's Twitter is pretty hilarious.
Yeah.
And everyone agrees that Ben Franklin would be like a beast on Twitter. So.
There's a consensus there. I feel so out of touch with like what is cool to young people right now. Do you feel like the same?
Well, I mean, I feel like by the time I know about it, it's probably on its way out.
But do you feel like it? Because, I mean, talking to you now, it's like I feel like I'm talking to the same teacher that I had so many years ago, 10 years ago now. Do you think that it in any way keeps you young? Like, does it keep your spirit sort of encapsulated?
Absolutely, yeah. Like you have to at least, I mean, even if like it's not necessarily the culture that I seek out and enjoy, I do at least know about, TikTok and
Sure.
All of the different YouTube stars and different like beef and so like
Sure. Now, something I also was mentioning before is that you were what now reflectively looking back, you were behind a lot of my success as a high school student, and even onwards. I've gone on into Groundlings and like that sort of thing. But you were the person who edited my high school graduation speech. You nominated me to be a part of the murder mystery dinner theater writing team. And I never felt like you properly got the accolades that you deserved. I remember my senior year, we were supposed to nominate people for Teacher of the Year. And I did not nominate you because I was so caught up in my own world that I wasn't thinking about anybody else. How do you, because maybe I think you're an amazing teacher, but how do you know that you are a good teacher if, when you're working, when you don't receive accolades like that sort of thing, or the recognition that you always deserve?
Well, I mean, first of all, thank you. That's just so sweet and lovely to hear. I do think in some ways that's part of the job of being a teacher is to see things in people that maybe they don't see yet, or to nurture something. And if you're in it for an immediate gratification, that's there are lovely things that happen just on the day to day, of course, but it is definitely, it's a long game. And I think high school, especially high school English, especially, is something that people remember and reflect on years later.
Totally.
So over the years, I really cherish the, if I get like an email or even just a message on Facebook, someone's like, hey, I did this thing in my college class and it made me think of so-and-so, and I was so glad that I knew this.
Yeah.
I had a student just at homecoming this past year. She was one of my advisees in my current school. And, we'd never really talked about politics, but at homecoming, she sought me out and said, I just had no idea how the world really worked. And thank you for, sort of letting us know that there was like more stuff in the world, but not forcing it down my throat. And now I really appreciate that. And just, it was super meaningful. You never know when that's going to happen or if it's going to happen.
Right.
So a lot of it is sort of, faith-based that.
Right. Well, and I imagine that's especially tough if you're a new teacher and you don't have you don't have what you're mentioning, the long haul of like, students aging out 10 years and then realizing, oh, actually this teacher meant a lot to me. You're just dealing with the, I remember one time, when Facebook had just come out and, we had just graduated and we took a class picture and somebody wrote worst class ever. And I felt more, it wasn't me who wrote the comment, but I felt so more, because you saw the comment and I felt so mortified that, how do you cope with like the mean streak that some teenagers have?
I mean, the good news, I think in so many ways, is that you don't have to stay a teenager forever. Mm-hmm. Everyone gets to be a teenager for a brief moment and then leave that space.
Yeah.
And it's a fine line of knowing how much you can take credit for and think like, yeah, I really did something there. Mm-hmm. And how much in a person's reactions or whatever, it's just not about you. Like maybe there's so many reasons why a kid might say, I hate this class. And I've heard I hate this class plenty of times.
Yes.
Yeah. And most of the time I am maybe like in the top 10 or 20 reasons why someone doesn't like a class, but it's really just me. So,
now you've touched a little bit on the importance of English and becoming a teacher and how you realize how formative and important the lessons that you're teaching are. When did you first think like, oh, I maybe want to become an English teacher?
Yeah, so this is a pretty common joke among a lot of English teachers.
Yeah.
Pretty much every English teacher is related to another English teacher. I don't know if you're like genetic or what, but almost everyone I know can point to someone in their family. Like for me, it's my mom.
Yes,
she was,
right.
So I grew up with this. But some folks are like, oh, my Aunt Betty was an English teacher, and I just remember she had the best stories or whatever. Uh-huh. So I don't know whether that is, we joke that it's genetic, but I think it might actually have a lot more to do with just values and the notion that in some families and households, teachers are held in really high esteem in a broader cultural context that pretty much does not do that.
Right.
So, I mean, when I went to college, that was the first time I ever heard anyone say, I didn't know smart people could be teachers, because like all the smart people I knew were teachers. When I had, like seminary professors that I was friends with, and just all of these brilliant folks. So,
well, that's something I was sort of thinking about when I was, thinking about what I was going to ask you and talk to you about. You are one of the smartest people that I feel like I've engaged with and interacted with. Does it ever frustrate you to, I mean, this is kind of just asking a yes question, but to be in a system where you're being led by people who are maybe not as intelligent as you are, how do you advocate for yourself in a system like that and, without going insane?
That's
the key part.
This is my 20th year teaching, which is insane.
Congratulations.
Started when I was 9.
Wow, so, of course. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And I taught in public school, obviously for the
Sure.
first 13 of those years, and then have been in an independent school since then.
Hmm.
And I do have to say that that got to be one of the toughest things towards the end of my time in public school. Not because the individuals in the building with me were not anything but
Right.
competent professionals, but there was just so many layers of bureaucracy, and it felt like the further you got away from the school building,
Hmm.
there was just very little trust for teachers, very little respect for teachers.
Mm.
More than once, we heard things like, well, this is a teacher-proof curriculum. The idea that, oh, these lessons are so easy, any idiot can do it.
Oh God.
And again, like that was never really the mentality inside the building. I think
Right.
Centennial School is really great, and I worked with some amazing folks. But that was just kind of the pervasive attitude of the system. So that was one factor that just sort of let me know, at that point I was midway, a third of the way through my career, and I was like, I can't do another, 2 decades of just feeling like a number or a cog in a machine.
Yeah.
So that was a big part of what prompted me to look at a different context.
I do remember that as a kid, even though I wasn't always privy to what was going on behind the scenes, but I do remember certain times when you and Rumfelt maybe had troubles with the administration.
Yeah.
And I had my own, I was going through my own problems with the administration, even as a student, just because that's who I was at the time. But we could never collaborate on that or talk about that. How do you draw a personal line with some students who you might feel a closeness to or proximity to?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously that came up a lot when and I forget during the 4 years that you were there, what I was sponsoring, but as both a student government sponsor and as newspaper. So in some ways, because those roles have such a proximity to the administration and dealing with the administration, it was in a lot of ways easier for me to be very much like, I am in my advisor role right now. I have to,
Right.
I can help students brainstorm solutions. I can help them role play and think through, if you want to have a tough conversation, how should you do it? But it was, that sort of helped me not need students, not need to get that feedback. And like
Totally.
you said, I had colleagues. I had, Kathy Rumfeld, Scott Kent, Jordan Kohanam, Ria Galanos, like so many folks who we could support each other.
Yeah.
So that was really helpful.
Totally. Well, in sort of the same vein, I know now being Facebook friends with you, I know that you have robust political opinions, but how do you, in a classroom setting and being in the South, how do you create sort of a neutral and balanced, classroom while still sort of teaching, certain values and beliefs?
Yeah. So, there's basically, there's a school of thought about teachers, about high school teachers in particular, that your students should never know what your beliefs are, that you should be sort of a blank slate and welcome all opinions, and that kind of thing. And I have some colleagues who espouse that and pull that off. And I think their students make some assumptions, but they're just as likely to be wrong as right.
Right.
And so that can definitely work for some people. I knew really fast that wasn't going to work for me.
Yeah.
I think that what has been more successful most of the time has been being almost like completely transparent and saying, this is where I come from. This is the way I see the world. Here's why. But I don't want anyone to ever parrot my beliefs just because they think that's what I want to hear.
Right.
And I really value conversation. And I can say with authenticity that I have friends and relatives and people that I really love and cherish who don't see eye to eye with me on issues, but
Mm-hmm.
we focus on what connects us and what we do have in common, and we can engage each other in a meaningful way. And for the most part, I have gotten a lot of good response with that.
Yeah.
There have definitely been times when that's, when it has caused some friction, but
Sure. Well, and one of the things that I learned from you is how to have an argument, how to construct an argument, and how to have sort of a debate, and not only a debate with other people, but a debate with yourself where you're countering your own points and you're thinking critically about what you say. And I think a lot of even what I post on social media has, I think, I try to always consider the other side. When you are personally seeing some of these arguments, I don't know what your timeline looks like or anything like that, but when you see some of the more ineffective conversations, what is something that you think we could all benefit from take into account when we're talking to people who maybe disagree with us?
And so I will say my Facebook is at this point pretty well curated. So I still have to see a lot.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
Yeah.
I think if you can pull it off sincerely to say, that's interesting, I hadn't heard of that, can you point me to a source where I can learn more? Which is a way of saying, I don't believe you. Like, I think your source, I think this is wrong.
Right. Oh,
but
interesting.
But that, it can be snarky to just be like, sources, ?
Totally.
But,
yeah. And something, but I mean, sourcing things was such a big part of your class, and knowing where the source of the information was almost as important as what you were writing. Almost as important, if not more important, than what you were writing. Everything had to be cited. Everything had to be sourced. And this sort of leads into my next question, which is, what is something that you hope that students get out of your class beyond, reading and writing, which I know English is so much more than that. But what is sort of your own personal mission statement with your classroom?
Yeah, I mean, I want them. This is, in some ways, I want them simply to be better people, just, which is not to say that they're not good to start with, but I think it means just making them feel better equipped, making them feel more confident, making them ask better questions, be more curious about the world. Yeah. I think to me, that's what makes a fuller or a more worthwhile existence. So just, giving them space and an opportunity to think about how they want to be in the world really is the bottom line. Right.
What are some of the personal markers that you use to know that you've done a good job? I know personally that you're not someone who necessarily looks at a grade or a number or anything like that. Yeah. How do you know when you've done a good job with a student? Because from having a mom who's a teacher, every student is different. So how do you know that you've helped someone?
It's really great to be able to have conversations about students and to look at their work and say, this paper or this project that we get in February or December, this is different from the stuff they were turning in August and September. They're doing work now that they couldn't have done before.
Right.
And so really just asking that question, like, is this, could they have done this? Would they have produced this, 3 months ago, 6 months ago? And, I'm dealing with, in that class, juniors, and typically pretty upper level juniors. So we're talking about gradation. I mean, I'm not teaching anyone how to read, but it's still just that,
right.
You said that depth of analysis, that, consideration of sources. So you really have to be attentive to that.
Yeah. With this quarantines, I love something that you posted the other day about not romanticizing it. And something with what I'm doing, or romanticizing the quarantine, I mean. Yeah. And something a criticism I have of what I'm making right now, which is I don't want to romanticize this quarantine. I want to still acknowledge that it's very difficult and tough for people out there. How do we as a society, protect our own mental sanity by celebrating the silver linings while also recognizing there's deeper issues going on?
Yeah, so for me, I think the two biggest things are acknowledging just the ridiculous and crazy amount of privilege it takes to be able to be, secure, and to just sort of sustain whatever sense of normalcy or regularity people have right now. That
Mm-hmm.
is just ridiculous. The resources that it takes for that to happen, and I think so. Acknowledging that, and being grateful for it, and it's not to feel guilty, but just to say, "Wow, that's some serious privilege right there."
Right.
And then for me, pretty early on, when folks would say, "I just can't wait to get back to normal," sort of pushing back on that and saying, this is this is a chance for us to really think about what normal even means, and how can we do better.
Mm.
And I think a lot of that has to do with those social issues, and another this is mostly on social media, but it's just straight facts. The idea that in the United States, when someone loses a job, that means losing health care for most people.
Right.
So the fact that we've had so many, like, what is it now, over 20 million people file for unemployment in the last however month or so,
Right.
that for the majority of those people, it means they're newly out of healthcare
During
which
a
is
pandemic when they need it the most. Right.
So yeah, I think you can hold space for all of this at the same time, and appreciate the chance that, hey, we're having a chance to reconnect with people, and artists are always going to make art, and writers are always going to write. That's what people do. But that this is still something really terrible that we need to think about how to grow from.
Right. Do you ever? I always go over. I tell myself not to go over, and then I always do. Do you ever? Do you ever write on your? Do you ever create anything for your own personal satisfaction? Like, do you ever write or?
Yeah, I do so little of that. I used to do a lot more, and I think some people think, oh, teaching is a great job to be able to write on the side, and I have found that to be completely the opposite, because almost every creative impulse that I have goes into that.
Right.
I've been journaling more just the last couple weeks, actually, but as far as writing for any sort of audience, not really.
Yeah. Well, do you have anything that you are currently obsessed? I love ending with obsessions.
Yes.
Are you obsessed with anything this week? Is there anything that's helping you get through? What would sponsor Larken McCord? What product or brand? Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Okay, this is so, it's not even, I can't even get a sponsorship for it, but I have really discovered a love for the super cheap grocery store flowers. They're just like carnations, which everyone always says, carnations are they're the shitty flowers. No, they are truly just beautiful, and they last for weeks. So
Yes.
I like everywhere in my house, I've got little pockets of just pretty things.
You have to.
So yeah.
I love that. So carnations, if you're looking for a sponsorship.
I know, right? Is there a carnation distributor? I don't know how that works.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for spending this quality QuaranTIME with me. This has been so fun and so rewarding, and I truly mean what I say when you have been one of the most influential teachers in my life. So
thank you. That means a lot.
Thank you. And take care of yourself, and we'll hopefully talk again soon.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, yay.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Quality QuaranTIME. New episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. See you next time.